Hi, welcome. Hope Zvara here, creator of Core Functional Fitness. And today we're going to hack our tree pose. So when you work with tree pose, for many of us, as a yoga teacher, we probably either find ourselves like this or you've seen people like this, where the goal for them is to bring the foot to the inside of the thigh, and they'll do anything possible, and in, I guess, the long run, they end up totally losing the purpose of the pose. And so when I teach my teacher trainers and my students at my studio about tree pose, it's usually the untree pose. A lot of my poses are the unpose because it's maybe not what they're traditionally taught. But we want to think about understanding our foundation whenever we practice a pose like tree. First of all, it starts at the foot. So if someone's toes are all gnarled up on the floor or super sensitive because they have really sensitive feet, they're in shoes too much, they're going to find that what's above is going to be faulty. So first and foremost, you're going to want to work out the bottom of the foot, either by rolling it out with an AccuBall or a golf ball or a foam roller, something to get those tissues in the foot really becoming aware and kind of almost like a sensory overload, really aware of the foot and the ground and that connection between the two. The second is what we're doing with the leg and what we're doing with the hip. And so that rotation of your leg bones has a lot to do with what's going on in the hip and also what's going on in the ankle. So for many of us, I want you to pay attention to your knees. Now instead of looking at the fronts of the knees, I want you to pay attention to the backs of the knees. So those tiny little marks, you can feel them on each side of the knee. They feel like vertical lines on each side. Those guys should be pointing straight back. So if you have collapsed ankles or you tend to walk on the outer edges of the feet, aligning your leg will automatically adjust the foot. So instead of trying to do all these crazy things with the feet, pay attention to where the legs are, and that will also start to help you sculpt muscles that may have been atrophied in the legs and help muscles that have maybe been overworked to back off. That's a whole other video, but just again, going through the body to help you get kind of the Cliff Notes version of getting ourselves into this successful tree pose. And then finally, the hip. So when we come into the hip, I have a 4-inch block today we're going to use. I'm going to step onto my block with one foot and come up into mountain pose. So we want to have pelvic neutral, pubic bone, hip bones run parallel towards me, front ribs are relaxed down, body is nice and upright. I'm going to adjust my foot accordingly on the block and then float its opposite. By all means, do this against the wall, as that will help with balance, or use a foam roller. But I'm going to float, so bear with me here. On the exhalation, sink into the hip, and I want you to press into that outer hip frame, be it glute, TFL, or IT band. So go where it's tight, and then bring yourself back to neutral. We're not hijacking the hip. We're just coming into a neutral position. And then again, drawing out, find the area that's tight without bending the base leg, and then bringing yourself back into neutral. Nice. So think about going sloppy, and then neutral. This sensation of moving into the hip and then coming out gives you this feeling of what I always tell my students of, you're trying to almost float in the hip socket rather than bear down on it. So I want you to do 5 more here as I talk. So if my forearm and my fist are my thigh bone and my other hand is my hip, many of us press down and sink into that hip socket. I want you to think about trying to elevate out of the hip socket and float. So there's this sensation of all of the deep and superficial muscles of the hip having to work together in tandem with the pelvic floor and leg. So once you come into that last one now, neutral your hips. You should be feeling gluteus maximus. That's the lower glute and pelvic floor. Those are those bathroom muscles within the base leg. Now, without doing anything of lifting, I want you to externally rotate your floating leg using the outer hip and leg muscles. Now, slowly slide your heel up your leg, only going as high as you can actually utilize the leg muscles. It may be more helpful if your hips are tight to actually flex the foot and cross it in front of the shin. So again, I'm working to keep neutral pelvis, level hips, and really work external rotation. I feel a big stretch through the groin, and I'm utilizing lower outer glute and pelvic floor. Now standing tall, I feel level, almost like I'm on both feet, but really I'm on one. Hands to heart or arms overhead. And so challenging that balance, we can recreate that much more efficiently if we step off the block then after doing that functional hip release. So release the arm slowly, gently release the leg, step off your block, and then we'll do the opposite side. I have a foam block, so I'm going to flip it and then bring myself on. If you don't have a block at home, use your steps, and you can easily work with the step. So again, my foot is forward, the back of my knee is pointing straight back, my knee is not locked. If you find that you're a hyperextender, you've probably overextended and overstretched some of the major ligaments that are supposed to help keep you from that hyperextension. So learning proper recruitment in neutral is so important, even for yogis. So neutral pelvis, relaxed front ribs. I'm going to float my opposite foot. The goal is not the floor. The goal is here. So here we go. Exhale, sit into the hip, stretch, and then inhaling, bringing it back into neutral, rather than coming above neutral. So lower and lift. I'm really impressing myself with balance here. Lower. I'm going to press into that which is tight, and then lift. If you're someone that has back issues, I highly recommend just doing this alone. You don't even have to do tree pose. But if we can start to create a healthy, balanced mobilization of the hips, we're going to find that we're much better off. So exhale, press, stretch, and back up to center. Exhale. If you're really short and tight through the upper leg, hip, and glute muscles, you're going to find your tendency is to want to bend the base knee because it feels like you're going farther. Let's go one more. This is another great one to do 2-to-1 ratio to your weaker or tighter side. Okay, level neutral pelvis. I'm going to externally rotate the leg as much as I can. I feel external rotators turn on. With a flexed foot, sliding the leg up my inner shin, or I find that I really like the leg in front of the shin because I can get so much more openness out of it. And true is a hip opener, right? But how many of you actually feel like your hips are opening? Without gripping with the toes. Now again, foot is flexed, leg is pushing back, base leg is strong. I feel like my hips are level and the outer and lower glute of that base leg is working strong in tandem with pelvic floor. So inhale through the nose and exhale, engage bathroom muscles and lower glute and hip and thigh muscles. So you should feel like this pose is really strong and really empowering. If it's too easy, there's something wrong. You're not doing something right. All right, now slowly release the floating leg, drop the arms, drop the foot. All right, the real test, doing it on the floor. So when you are in mountain pose, neutral, neutral, and we tell someone to shift their body weight, I think what the teacher is trying to tell you is not to literally shift, but you're going to bring your body weight over to one foot to lift the opposite. So my challenge for you is to pull out of that hip socket, okay? Remember I was telling you about the hand and the fist? So that when I shift my weight to my left, it's like I'm still on both feet. So you have to have really good hip muscles and really good core muscles in order to do that. So I'm going to stay strong. And as I pick up my right leg, I'm going to rotate it out and slide it up. It still feels like I'm hugging the midline of my body rather than here or here. So inhaling through the nose, arms can come up. Keep your shoulders rooted down and your ribs rooted down. Exhale. Keep breathing. Create a lot of space, equal length on both sides, keeping your hips level and really challenging that external rotation. You're doing great. And then slowly coming down and bringing your hand to the floor, or foot to the floor. I'd recommend using a chair or a wall. You might surprise yourself on how challenging this is. Keep the feet forward again. And I'm going to check the back of my knee just with my awareness, or you can have a mirror or someone check for you. Spread the foot, nice neutral pelvis, front ribs relaxed. So I'm going to try to draw up and out of my right hip. Glute is firing, pelvic floor is firing. So when I take my left leg off the floor, try to watch. I'm going to try to minimize my shift as much as I can by staying strong. So heel lifts, I'm going to turn the foot out, really recruit bottom of the pelvis and deep core as I slide my leg up and out. So I'm trying to hug that neutral frame. Pressing the palms, continue to rotate the leg out, hip opener, lower glute contractor, pelvic floor. Breathe. And if you're choosing to extend the arms, think about drawing up through the crown and the back body rather than elevating the ribs. Inhale through the nose, breathe wide into your lungs. Exhale, breathe deep, no gripping. And then exhale, slowly bringing the hands down. Release the leg with control. Awesome. So with just a little bit more effort and a little bit more awareness, I know that you're going to get much more out of tree pose in just a few exercises in addition to your tree pose. So remember, 4-inch block or a step. Be willing to work into those tight areas of the hip and think about lifting out of your hip socket and then rotating that leg externally. It's not about getting the foot here. It's about thinking about what we're actually trying to do in the pose, and that's open the pelvis and strengthen our hip and leg muscles. For more information, visit my website at hopecorefitness.com. I have a great online training, Core Functional Fitness Functional Foundation, that's available for students and practitioners, and I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message. From my heart to yours, from my soul to yours, we're going to do it one tree at a time. Namaste.